Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, 43a of Maseches Kiddushin. We are starting from 3 lines down on the page. The Gemara is discussing the idea of shlichus, of agency, and specifically the question of whether there can be shlichus lidvar avera. Can you have somebody represent someone else as an agent that we would say shlucho shel adam kamoso, that the agent becomes like himself for a prohibition, for a transgression, for an avera? So the Gemara originally said no. It said you cannot. It brought the svara, the logic of divrei harav, divrei atamid, divrei mishomin, that the agent should listen to the teacher, not to the student. He should listen to the Torah and not to the person who is assigning him or sending him on this agency, on this mission, and therefore the agency never takes effect. He should never listen. The Gemara then brought an example where we do find that there's shlichus l'dvar avera, where you could have agency for a transgression. That was in the context of me'ilah, of misappropriating sanctified money or objects, hektish. That if I give someone money that's hektish, it's sanctified, to go and buy something that's a misuse of that money, and he does it, then I am responsible. I'm the one who has to bring the carbon. So we see that there's agency for an avera there. Now, the Gemara said, well, that's because there's a special drasha, a special gzeira shava, that teaches me that that's true over there. So the Gemara says, well, if it's true over there, why don't we learn it to other places and extend it, that it's not just here? Just like the Torah teaches me by me'ilah, you can have shlichus l'dvar avera, agency for a transgression, so to everywhere else. So the Gemara said, that would be nice, but there's another source for it. There's another place where we find shlichus l'dvar avera, that it works. That was the example the Gemara gave was where somebody's watching somebody's object and he uses it. So even if he doesn't use it, according to one opinion, according to Beis Hillel, even if he tells somebody to use it, they represent him, and it's as if he used it, and he's now responsible for the object. That's forbidding. And we have shlichus l'dvar averos. Now we have 2 places that we have it, and we have a rule that whenever we have 2 places, if we have 2 sources for one thing, we don't extrapolate it and apply it to other places. So that made sense according to the opinion that held that shlichus, that there is shlichus, there is agency in that scenario of using something that belongs to someone else when you're supposed to be watching it. That even when you ask someone else to use it, that's still in violation as if you did. However, according to Beis Shammai, the Gemara said that's not the case. So according to Beis Shammai, the only case of shlichus l'dvar avera seemingly is the case of me'ilah. And if there's only one case, then we should be able to learn from there to all other places that we always can have shlichus for an avera. So the Gemara ended up answering, no, actually, even according to Beis Shammai, there's a second source, and that is tvicho mechira, where somebody steals either a sheep or an ox, and then either sells it or slaughters it. In either case, they are now obligated to pay 4 or 5 times for the sheep, 4 times for the ox, 5 times the value to the owner. And that is true whether he shechted it himself after stealing it or he had somebody else shecht it and represent him. So we see that you can have agency in the context of an avera. And that would be a second source according to Beis Shammai. So that's what the Gemara now is going to expound on. And the Gemara says that we see now we have 2 sources. One is me'ilah, misappropriating hektish. The second is tvicho mechira, slaughtering or selling an animal that was stolen, a sheep or an ox. So the Gemara says, 3 lines down, the end of the line, it says, me'ilah hada amran. The case of me'ilah, misappropriating hektish, that you can have agency there, that we've already explained. Tvicha umechira mahi, but what do we mean, or what's the source for the idea that you can have an agent when it comes to shechting or selling an animal that you stole, that if somebody else does it, it's as if you did it. So the Gemara says, because the verse says that when somebody steals a ox or a sheep, utivacho o mecharo, and he slaughters it or he sells it, then he has to pay 4 or 5 times. So the Gemara learns out that ma mechira al yedei acher, just like when you sell something, you need somebody else to be involved. So when I sell this ox, I'm not doing it myself, I'm doing it with someone. So too, af tevicha al yedei acher. So too, when I mentioned tevicha, when I mentioned slaughtering it, that also could have been with another person. And so, just like selling involves another person, also when it says to slaughter it, that could be having another person do it. So that would be a source that even though somebody else slaughtered it, still I, as the ganav, as the one who stole it, would be responsible to pay 4 or 5 times. Debeir Bishmal Tana, in the school, the base medrash of Rabbi Shmuel, they had a different way of learning it out. O l'rabos shliach. It says or, and that comes to include the shliach, the agent, meaning it says, and he sells it or slaughters it. Now it could have said he sells it and slaughters it. Now even though that's not the case, that he needs to sell it and slaughter, but that's normal for the Torah to say and when it means or. But here it actually said or. So that can be looked at as extra. What's it coming to include? It's coming to include that or, even if somebody else did it. Devei Chizkiya Tana, in the base medrash, in the school of Chizkiya, they taught tachas l'rabos shliach. There's an extra word tachas in the verse, that comes to include that even if it's done through an agent. Because the verse says that he should pay 5 times tachas hashar instead of the ox, and 4 times tachas haseh, 4 times under or instead of the sheep. And it didn't need to say instead of tachas twice. So what's the extra tachas coming to teach me? It's coming to teach me that there can be someone else instead in this case, and that means that it doesn't have to be me who's the one doing it. It could be that somebody else did it, an agent did it, and it's considered as if I did it. So we come out, in the end, even according to Beis Shammai, we have 2 sources for ein shlichus l'dvar avera. For shlichus l'dvar avera. 2 cases where we actually see that there's agency in a case of an avera. But once I have 2 cases, I can't extend it further because of this rule that when I have 2 verses, 2 sources for something, I limit it to those 2. I don't learn it and extend it to other places. So the Gemara says, that's very good if you hold that way. If you are of the opinion, because it's a machlokas, it's a dispute. If you are of the opinion that when you have 2 verses teaching you the same thing, you can't learn to other places, so then very good. I can't learn to other places that there could be shlichus for an avera. But according to the opinion that you could, that even when you have 2 sources for something, you could extend it to other places. What are you going to say? Why don't we say, just like there's shlichus l'dvar avera, there's agency for transgression in the case of me'ilah, and possibly in the case of using someone's object that you're supposed to be watching, and in the case where you steal an animal and shecht it, why don't we say that, so to in all cases there's shlichus for an avera? So the Gemara answers, according to this opinion, you have to say, Gali rachmana b'shchutei chutz. The Torah revealed, in the context of shchutei chutz, of shechting an animal outside of the walls of the Beis HaMikdash, an animal that's supposed to be a carbon. You're not allowed to shecht it beyond, outside the walls of the Beis HaMikdash. And in the context of that prohibition, the Torah teaches me that there is no shlichus for an avera, that somebody cannot represent you in that prohibition. Because what does it say there? It says, Dam yechashev la'ishahu dam shafach. That the blood is considered against that person as if he spilled blood. So it's a grave prohibition to slaughter, to shecht an animal for a carbon, for an offering outside of the walls of the Beis HaMikdash. Now, it says, la'ishahu, to that man. And that's to teach me, hu velo shlucho, him but not his agent. In other words, Now, there's a bit of a girsa question here, because it's actually a little hard to interpret this. Some change that is supposed to say, hu v'lo shalchav, him and not the one who sent him. Meaning, whoever is the one who slaughters it, that's who's responsible. So you learn here. It's as if he spilled blood to that man, the man who actually did it, specifically. So whoever is the one that slaughtered it, that's who's responsible. There's no shlichus for an avera. Whoever did the avera, that's who's responsible for it. Okay, so we have a source that you don't have shlichus for an avera. So the Gemara says, Ashkechan gabe shlutei chutz. So we find in the context of shechting outside the walls of the Beis HaMikdash Karban that you can't have a shlichus for an avera. Fine, very nice. But b'chol Torah minolam. But how do we know that that's true everywhere else in the Torah, that you can't have shlichus for an avera? So the Gemara says, Di yalef mishchutei chutz. Well, we learn it from there. We learn it just like by this scenario, this prohibition of shechting a carbon outside the walls of the Beis HaMikdash. You can't have an agent. Whoever does it is the one who's responsible. So to everywhere else. But the Gemara asks, Ati yalef mishchutei chutz, neilef mehanach. But how do we choose where to learn from? On the one hand, we can learn from shchutei chutz, from the prohibition to shecht outside the Beis HaMikdash, to shecht a carbon, that you never have. In all other cases, you don't have shlichus for an avera. Ein shliach l'dvar avera. Or we could learn from our other places where we do find agency by an avera. Let's learn from there that actually you do have agency for an avera. So how do we know which to choose? So the Gemara explains, because hadar kasav rachmana v'nichras ha'ishahu. That same verse goes on and it says, this guy who shechted his animal outside the Beis HaMikdash, his carbon outside the Beis HaMikdash, so he gets karis. And it says, which is the excision. So, different ways to explain what exactly that is. But whatever karis is exactly, he gets it. And it says, Ha'ishahu, it says that man. But we already said that man. Earlier in the verse it said, Dam yechashev la'ishahu, that it's considered his blood, that he spilled blood, that man. And then it says, and that man should be cut off. Why does he have to repeat that? So it's not telling me that it's specifically that man over here, because I know that already over here. I already said that man and no other man, that everybody's responsible for themselves. So to know inyan l'kol ha'torah kula. Gemara explains, if it's not coming to teach me that man, that each person is responsible for what they do, and you can't be an agent for someone else, for an avera, if it's not telling me this about shlutei chutz, about shechting outside the Beis HaMikdash, because I already know it, so it must be telling me about the rest of the Torah. It's telling you we're going to extend this to other places in the Torah. So asks the Gemara, now let's go back to the other opinion. The other opinion said that when you have two verses that teach me the same thing, we don't extend it out. And therefore, I never would have thought to extend this idea of shlichus l'dvar avera. I know ein shliach l'dvar avera already. I already know that there's no agency for an avera. So I don't need to learn it from shchutei chutz. So hani, hahu, my darish b'hu. So what are they going to do with these extra hahus? That man. I know that it's only that man, because ein shliach l'dvar avera. You can't have a messenger for an avera. So whoever shechted it outside the Beis HaMikdash, that's who's responsible. Why does he have to say, according to the opinion that I already know ein shliach l'dvar avera, why does he have to say, hahu, that man, twice? Explains the Gemara, chad limutei shnayim she'ochzin b'sakin v'shochtin. One of them is coming to exclude that if it would be two people doing it. If two people would hold the knife at the same time and shecht the animal for a carbon outside the Beis HaMikdash, so they're exempt. I mean, it's still prohibited, but they're not going to get the same punishment. So, so that's what it's coming to. So that man, meaning if it's one person, if it's two people at the same time, they would be exempt, they'd be pater from any punishment. V'chad, and what's the other ahu? That man. Why do I need the second one? It's to teach me hu v'lo anas. Hahu means him in his normal state. But not if he is forced to do it. He will not be punished. Hu v'lo shogeg. And not if he did it by accident. It has to be deliberate. Hu v'lo mutta. And it can't be that he accidentally did it. Meaning, I guess shogeg is he didn't know it was wrong, and he did it. Mutta means it was like an accident, I suppose. But so the who, the second who was telling me, this has to be intentional. He has to know what he's doing in order for him to be liable. That's what it teaches me. The idach. So now go back the other way. The other opinion that said that who is teaching me only he's responsible but not his messenger. So what does he do with? How does he know these things? How does he know that if two people do it, they're exempt? And if he's not in a normal state of mind, if he makes a mistake or he didn't know or he was compelled, he's exempt. How does this other opinion know that? V'idach mehu hahu. The other opinion says it could have just said who. It could have said, I guess it could have said, Dam yechashev la'ish hu, or v'nichras ha'ish hu, instead of hahu. Would be an interesting way to say it, but that's what he says. And so the he is extra. Hahu, so I can include more things. That's how I can include. I have two hahus, by the way. Both of them could have said who, and instead they say hahu. So I can, based on that extra hey, I can include these two things which the other opinion is learning from hahu, which is number one, that if two people do it, they're exempt. They do it together. And number two, the person has to be in a normal state of mind. Ve'idach. So the other opinion, he was using the whole word ahu to teach me these things. But really, we're now saying you only need the hey. And the rest can be used to teach me that there's no shliach for a dvar avera here, which he doesn't need, so then it becomes extra. So what does the other opinion, going back the other way, say about the ha-hu? You're having extra things to learn now. What do you learn from that? So the other one says, nah, you don't learn anything from that. V'idach hu ha-hu lo darish. He says there's nothing, you can't learn anything from the extra hey. It's a normal way to say it. Like I said, it's a very funny thing to take something out of that it's a ha-hu instead of hu. Hu would have been an interesting way to say it. Ha-hu is the normal way to say it, and therefore this other opinion says I don't learn anything extra from there. I only have one thing to learn from each one, ha-hu, and therefore the only things that I'll learn from here are that if two people do it, they're exempt, and if somebody's not in his normal state of mind, he's also exempt. But I don't need this pasuk to teach me that there's no agency for Avera, because that I already know that's true throughout the whole Torah. While the other side is saying that no, I need this hahu to teach me that to the rest of the Torah. Okay, the Gemara asks, the ha-detani ha. So now we have a question from another scenario. We learned in a brisa, ha-omer l'shlucho. If somebody says to his messenger, say haroges hanefesh, go and kill someone. So I appoint someone, not I. Someone appoints someone to kill someone. So, hu chayav v'sholcha pater. The brisa says, the one who actually murders is the one who's chayav, he's obligated, he's liable, and the one who sent him is exempt. Shammai hazaking omer, but Shammai the elder says, mishum Chagai Hanavi, quoting a tradition from the prophet Chagai, sholchav chayav, the one who sent the murderer, the one who hired the hitman, he is chayav, he's liable. How does he know? Or at least what does he bring as evidence? Shenemar, as the verse says, Oso harakta b'char b'nei Ammon. After King David, David HaMelech, sends Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, into battle against Ammon to die, basically, sends him to the front lines. So the Navi, Nasan HaNavi, comes to David and he says, you killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. But he says, you, David, killed him. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. And sort of you sent the Ammonites to kill him, basically, or you really sent him to be killed by the Ammonites. So, but you arranged this, so therefore you're responsible. So, but what about the concept of ein shlichus l'dvar avera? You can't have a shliach for avera. They're responsible for killing him, not David. David didn't kill him. So, my taibe de Shammai Azakin. What is Shammai Azakin's reasoning when he says that David could be responsible? Kasavar, because he holds he holds that when you have two verses of the same thing, you could teach. So we have a couple places where we see that you can have agency for Avera, and we're going to use those to teach. Everywhere else in the Torah, there's always agency for Avera. And furthermore, Vehu hahu lo darish. And he's not going to learn from Shlutei Chutz that it's limited. Shlutei Chutz, according to what we mentioned previously, was going to teach me just like whoever shechts the animal outside the Beis HaMikdash is responsible. There's no shlichus, so to everywhere else. But that was based on learning the extra hahu. And Shammai Azakin won't hold of that. So the Gemara is suggesting at the moment is that Shammai Azakin actually holds that you can have shlichus for an avera. Because he said that when David sent Uriah to be killed, some sort of appointing Ammon to kill him, he was responsible. That's what the Navi said to him. You killed him. So the Gemara says, actually, alternatively, v'bayisema, if you want, you can say otherwise, which is that olam darish. That really Shammai holds of these drashos, and really he holds that in general there's no shlichus for an avera. You can't have a messenger for killing, and even for this, even David wasn't responsible really for killing. He wasn't chayav, he wasn't liable. Umay chayav, what did Shammai mean when it said that David was chayav, was liable for killing Uriah? Chayav b'dinei shamayim. He meant he was liable in heaven. Heaven would hold him responsible. After all, he deliberately brought about this person's death. Yeah, we won't obligate him in a human court, but the heavens will hold him responsible. That's what Shammai meant. And that you see that in the way that Nasar HaNavi rebuked David and he said, you killed him. In heaven, they're holding you responsible. So the Gemara asks, are you implying that the opinion that says that ein shlichus l'dvar avera, and that there's no agency, and that when somebody sends someone to kill someone, only the murderer is responsible, only the hitman and not the sender, you think that they hold and he's not even responsible in the heavens? Why would the heavens not hold someone responsible for hiring a hitman? Ella, so rather, what exactly are they arguing about? Shammai Azakin in the first opinion, where you send someone to be murdered, Dina Rabba Dina Zuta Benayu. They're just arguing how severely they hold you liable in the heavens. Everybody agrees that there's a liability and that God frowns on this and it's a transgression and one is going to face repercussions for this. The question is how much. So the first opinion says not so much, or it's Zuta. It's a small responsibility. It's certainly forbidden, but not, nothing so severe, I guess. I mean, obviously it's severe, but I guess there's gradations. So, and Shammai Azakin says, no, it's Dina Rabba. This is very serious. Maybe it's even almost on the level of actually killing the person. So that's what they're arguing. So everybody agrees the heavens are going to hold this person responsible, but as the sender. But the question is how responsible. Or alternatively, you can say Shani Hasam. There it's different. Degali Rachmana Oso Harakta B'char B'nei Ammon. There, the Torah, the Navi revealed to us that David was responsible, because the Navi said to him, "You killed him." Meaning, maybe it's specifically by murder that one is responsible, because we can see that from the story of David. That maybe, when it comes to murder, this is another exception. Generally we say, Ein shlichus l'dvar avera. There's no messenger for avera. there's no agency, but maybe when it comes to murder, there could be, because that's what that seems to indicate. Because the Navi tells David, you killed him. So we see when it comes to murder, there is some level of agency. I think it's pasha, it's obvious that the murderer himself would still be responsible. So this can't be completely literal, meaning we're just trying to explain what Shammai Hazaking meant. This is not the same as all the other cases of agency. When it came to Me'ilah, for example, misappropriating Hektish, so there the agent was exempt and the sender was liable. I don't think Shammai Hazaking is suggesting that when it comes to murder, the agent would be exempt. But just that we see from David that also the sender could be held responsible. V'idach, and the other opinion says, no, you're misreading the verse. You know what Nasan HaNavi was telling David? He was telling him, Harei lecha kechere b'nei Ammon. You're just like the sword of the Ammonites. He said, you killed him like the Ammonites. But what does that mean? Macherev b'nei Ammon einat hanenesh alav. Just like you're not going to be punished for what the Ammonites did to him. Af Uriah Hachiti iyat hanenesh alav. So too, you won't be punished for Uriah Hachiti being killed. My taima, what's the reason? Morid b'malchus hava. Because Uriah Hachiti actually was deserving to be killed. And that's because he was a morid b'malchus, he had rebelled against the king. He had dishonored the king in a way that one could be liable. What is that? Because he said to the king, Va'adoni Yoav, my master Yoav. Yoav was David's general, and in front of the king he referred to him as my master. Adoni Yoav, avdei Adoni al pnei asad echonim. He said, my master Yoav, and all of my the servants of my master are camping in the fields, and you want me to go sleep in my bed tonight, he said to David. But he referred to Yoav as my master in front of the king, and that is a disrespect to the king. That's morid b'malchus. That's something that one can be liable to be killed for. And so, therefore, the other opinion is saying that what Nasan HaNavi was actually saying to David, when he said, "So harakta b'chayr b'nei Ammon," you killed him by the sword of the b'nei Ammon. He was saying that just like you are, you're not going to be punished for what Ammonites do. So too, you're not going to be punished for what happened for you, what you did to bring about Uriah's death. Fine. So the Gemara now continues, and the Gemara says, Amar Rava. Rava said, Im tinsil amar savar Shammai shtei kazanam kachad melamdin v'hu ahu lo darish. He says, let's say, looking back at this opinion of Shammai Hazaking, who had said that if a person sends an agent to kill someone, the sender is also liable. So he said, where will you get that from? So one of the suggestions was he actually holds yesh shlichus l'dvar avera. You can have agency for an avera. And could we get to that conclusion? It takes two pieces. Number one, that you, like even when you have two sources for something, you can still learn from there to other places. And number two, that he doesn't learn from shchutei chutz, the extra word ahu, that in all places that there's no shlichus l'dvar avera. Rather, he holds yesh shlichus l'dvar avera. You can have agency by an avera. So he says, even if that's the case, Modeh, he would agree that in the following cases, there's no shlichus for havera. There's no agency. What is that? Be'omer l'shlucho tzei ba'olas ha'erva. If somebody tells an agent, go and have relations with a forbidden relationship, or he tells him, be'echolas ha'chelev, or he says, go and eat chelev, forbidden fats, everybody would agree that in that case, shehu chayev, the agent, the one who actually did it, is liable, V'sholcha pater, and the sender is exempt. Because we don't find anywhere in the Torah that one person would get the pleasure and the other person would be liable. So that doesn't make sense. When can we say there's shlichus l'dvar avera? Potentially, when is it possible to say that you can have an agent for an avera? That's if it's not something where somebody's going and experiencing a forbidden pleasure. So, somebody murders someone, that's not the forbidden pleasure. So there, potentially, at least Shammai Azakin could hold that there's agency for an avera. But says Rava, but if it's something like a forbidden relationship or eating something that's forbidden, there's no way you can have agency there. You never find that one person will derive the benefit and the other person will be liable. So whoever is the actual one to do the act there, everybody will agree that he's the one who's liable. Okay. Gemara continues with a new topic here, still related to shlichus, to messengers, to agencies. It says, Itmar, it was said, Rav Amar Shliach Naseid. So actually this is in the context of Kiddushin. It could be also for monetary matters. Let's say somebody sends an agent to sanctify a woman. Can that agent also be one of the witnesses? Right, so you need two witnesses for the Kiddushin to take effect. Can the agent be a witness? Be one of the two witnesses? But if the husband is the one there, he cannot be one of the witnesses, right? But what about the agent? So, Rav Amar Shliach Naseid. Rav says the agent could be one of the two witnesses. Debei Rabbi Shila Amri, but in the base medrash of Rabbi Shila they said, Ein Shliach Naseid. The agent cannot be one of the witnesses. My time Debei Rabbi Shila. What is his reason? If the reason is because he never assigned the person to be a witness. I guess right when you said an agent, so the agent would be the one who's supposed to appoint the witnesses. He's not going to appoint. He can't tell himself, be a witness to myself. So maybe that's the problem. He never said, be a witness. But if that was true, kidesh isha b'fnei shnayim. If somebody sanctified a woman, betrothed a woman, did kiddushin in front of two people, and he didn't say to them, you are my witnesses. You're going to tell me that's not Kiddushin? No, you don't need to say atameda. You don't need to appoint the witnesses as witnesses. As long as they witness something, it's good. So when the messenger is going to be the witness, it can't be a problem because he didn't appoint himself as a witness. Or he wasn't appointed as a witness, because you don't need to do that. It's a nice thing to do. Everybody is focused and knows what they're doing, but it still works if nobody said you're the witness. As long as you have witnesses, that's enough. So what is the reason that Rabbi Shila, Debei Rabbi Shila, why they would hold that that the shliach, the agent, cannot be one of the two witnesses? So the Gemara says, Ella. So rather it's as follows: Rav Amar Shliach Naseid. Rav says that a shliach, the agent, could be one of the witnesses. He's just making his words stronger. Meaning, if he's the one who did it, and then he's reporting, he's a witness saying that it happened, so it's even better. His testimony is even better. Why shouldn't he be able to not only did he witness it happen, he was the one doing it. Amazing. That's what Rav says. Debei Rabbi Shila Amri, but in the base medrash Rabbi Shila, they argue and say that he cannot be one of the witnesses, because Ein Shliach Naseid. Why? Why can't he be a witness? Because Kevan de Amar Mar, since we already said earlier, Shlucho Shel Adam Kamoso, that the agent of a person is like himself, Havle Kegufe, so he's like the man himself. And like we said, the man himself cannot be a witness to his own Kiddushin, while the agent is him. Shlucho Shel Adam Kamoso, the agent becomes like him, so the agent cannot be a witness. That's the opinion of the base medrash of Rabbi Shila. So we have a machlokas, we have a dispute. Can the agent be one of the two witnesses? So Meistvei, the Gemara brings a contradiction from a brisa. The brisa says, Amar l'shlosha tz'u v'kidshuli ha'isha. If a man says to three people, he says, my friends, go and betroth the woman. So then what should they do? There are three people. So it's great. Echad shliach. One of them will be the agent. Ushnayim edim. and the other two will be the witnesses. He tells 3 people, go and betroth the woman. 1 will be the agent, and 2 of them will be the witnesses. Divrei Beis Shammai. That's the opinion of Beis Shammai. Ubeis Hillel Omrim, and Beis Hillel says, Kulam Shluchan Hein. They are all agents. Ve'ein shliach nasa eid. And an agent cannot be a witness. So he didn't tell them witnessing. He said, go and betroth her. So he told all of them to go together to betroth her. They're all agents, and they can't be the witnesses. That's what Beis Shammai says. Beis Hillel. Now, the case here was where he told 3 people to go. Beis Shammai says when you tell 3 people, it works, because one of them could be the witness, could be the agent, and the other 2 could be the witnesses. And Beis Hillel says it doesn't work because none of them can be the witnesses. The Gemara says, Ad kan lo pligi ela b'shlosha. They're only arguing when you have 3 people. Abal b'shnayim divrei hakol lo. When you have 2 people, everybody agrees that it won't work. Because Beis Shammai only said it works because the agent, when you have 3, the agent doesn't have to be one of the witnesses. You can have the other 2. I mean, you could have, when you have 3 people, you could say 1 is an agent and the other 2 are witnesses. But if there were only 2 people, you wouldn't be able to do that. The implication is that this worked according to Beis Shammai. According to Beis Hillel, it doesn't work at all. None of them can. They're all agents, and he says agents can't be witnesses. But according to Beis Shammai, it only works because you could divide it up and say, okay, you're the agent and you 2 are the witnesses. But if it was just 2 people, you need 2 witnesses. So one of them has to be the agent. But if he's the agent, it sounds like he can't be the witness. So how do we explain Rav? He's contradicted by both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. How could Rav say that a shliach can become an aid, that the agent can become a witness? The Gemara says, Huda Amar Ki Hai Tana. He holds like the following Tana, who quoted the machlokas, the dispute of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel differently. The Tanya that we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Nassan Omer. Rabbi Nassan says, Beis Shammai Omrim, that Beis Shammai says, Shliach ve'ed echad. That actually, according to Beis Shammai, you can have 2 people. A shliach, an agent, and an eid echad, and 1 witness. That's good enough. Because the shliach could become a witness. That's the opinion of Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel Omrim, Beis Hillel says, Shliach u'shnei edim. Beis Hillel says, no, you need an agent and you need 2 witnesses. You cannot have the agent become a witness. So according to this version, we do have an opinion that says that the agent can be a witness. The opinion of Beis Shammai. So it could be that Rav is going in the opinion of Beis Shammai. To that, the Gemara asks, Rav ka Beis Shammai? Does Rav hold like Beis Shammai? Rav was a student of the school of Hillel. So how could he be going like Beis Shammai? So the Gemara says, Eipoch, you're right. It must be that it's switched. We misquoted Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai must be the one who says that the agent cannot be a witness, and Beis Hillel must be the one who says that the agent could be a witness. And that's how we'll understand Rav. He is like Beis Hillel, an agent could become a witness. V'Rav Acha b'rei Rava masni ipcha. But Rav Acha, the son of Rava, he didn't switch Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Rather, he switched the machlokas of Rav and to Bei Rabbi Shila to make it make sense. Rav Amar Ein Shliach Nasa Eid. Rav holds that an agent cannot become a witness, and that would be like the opinion of Beis Hillel, the way that we formulated the Brisa originally, that Beis Hillel holds the agent cannot become a witness. To Bei Rabbi Shila Amri Shliach Nasa Eid. And in the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Shila, they say that a shliach could become an aid. The agent could be a witness, like the opinion of Beis Shammai. What is the halacha? V'hilchasa shliach nasa aid. The Gemara concludes the halacha actually is that an agent could be considered an aid, could be considered a witness. Now that could be going like Beis Shammai, which would be a little bit strange. Or it could be that we accept the idea that we're supposed to flip them. Meaning this was how we originally had Rav formulated, that the shliach could become a witness, and we suggested that maybe we have to flip Beis Hillel, and really Beis Hillel holds this as well. And that's the conclusion of the Gemara, that the agent for the betrothal, for the Kiddushin, can actually be one of the witnesses. And like I said earlier, actually the same will be true for monetary matters, that a shliach, an agent, could be considered a witness over a transaction.